and be a part of the anniversary 175th year of the founding of Upper Allen Township. And I won't get into that too much. I think if you want to, how about now? Okay, I'll keep this right in front of me. Thank you. So as far as the establishment of the township, I won't get into that too much other than Cumberland County was founded in 1750. Of course, we were still a colony at that time. And then in 1850, Allen Township, which was huge, was cut down in size, and they made Upper and Lower and took part of it for some other areas. So I thank you all for coming tonight, and I hope that when you leave, you have a better understanding of some past events and places within the township, and of course, one place in particular, and that is the Lincoln Cemetery on West Winding Hill Road. It's located at 472 to 520 West Winding Hill Road, and it is on private land. It's owned by Lyndon Gates IV, and he is kind enough to let people go there. We have a Memorial Day service every year, and I'll be speaking at the one in 2 weeks. Again, be my fourth time. And he cuts the grass. They open the gate. So we're going to have a get together at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Memorial Day. So if you're interested in coming out, we usually get about 80 or 90 people there. And it's about an hour long. Hopefully it won't rain. So you're welcome to come in 2 weeks to that. The early history of the cemetery is somewhat shrouded in the mist of time, as many old things are. And as far as the 1862, what they have it denoted, it has a marker there. Okay, I'm going to start at the beginning here. This is a 1971 United States Geological Survey map. And this is South York Street coming from Mechanicsburg, which is way up at the top. You can't see it. South York Street comes to this crossroads right here. That's West Winding Hill Road. And if you keep coming up the hill, you're going to hit Shepherdstown up here. This is the Chestnut Hill Cemetery. And if you come out here a little way, that line going off at an angle is the driveway, and that shaded area is where the cemetery is located. When that photo was taken, that was a jungle. And I mean a literal jungle. You could hardly get in there. And there were groundhog colonies, holes everywhere. All the tombstones were down and scattered. They had been, kids went in and did damage. They ransacked the place. So in 1978, the veterans, the Vietnam veterans of Mechanicsburg, were looking for something to do that was a good thing. They came to find out that there were USCT troops buried there. That's United States Colored Troops. It's a black cemetery. And they went in there and they cleaned it up. They reset the stones. Just found out recently some of them aren't where they should be, but they're up. And I don't think anybody's going to be digging up the graves to find where they should be. And there are 82 stones in that cemetery. There could be as many as 200 or 300 burials out there. We don't know. I've helped with cleaning it up a little bit, picking up sticks, things like that, so that the guy could mow. And all around the perimeter, there are trees and weeds and bushes. A lot of stones that are laying there were probably markers. I know they were, because I know graveyards. And a lot of times, well, in those days, of course, the black folks, especially that were slaves, they didn't have much money to be buying tombstones. But, and when children were buried in the old days, a lot of times they just put a stone there. So a lot of the stones around the perimeter, which if you go, you really won't be able to see, they'll be in the weeds. Those were markers too. And someday, I hope, if we can get that on the National Register of Historic Places, I really, really hope that we get permission and can afford to do a survey of a ground penetrating radar. And I'll get into that a little bit more. And I see Nancy here. She and her husband, Paul Kreiner, they're in charge pretty much of the Vietnam veterans. I didn't see you before, so thanks for coming. And so I'll go, the early history, like I said, we don't know a whole lot. I've been finding out a lot more recently. Friday, I was in at Mechanicsburg Museum Association, and they lent me a book that was done in 2002 that I had never seen before, and it's on the cemetery. And Mr. Bill Murray gave me a paper that I had never seen before, also on the cemetery. So we're learning things all the time about it, but there's a lot of information in there, and I really haven't had a chance to look through it yet. My eclectic collection here of some of the stuff I brought, the reason I brought Civil War things is because of those USCT, the colored troops that fought for this country. And the Native American things, I found all of these. I have many, many more, and I'll be doing a show in at the park in the fall where I'm probably going to set up 8 or 9 tables, and I'll have hundreds of pieces set up. But these are all local, and I found all of these. And these two right here came from Bowmansdale, right where the park is. I found them before the park went in there. So, next one. This is the William Harkness House. And it's right at that jog where South York Street goes across, or is intersected by West Winding Hill Road. This building was built from 1783 to 1788. He was a Revolutionary War hero. He also was a slaveholder. And I think, I don't know for sure, although again, I've gotten some new information just last year on this research that was done on this area, where we list, he usually only had 2 or 3 slaves at a time. But if you were one of those slaves, you know, I mean, I don't want to get into the politics of the way things are today and the way we think they should have been years ago. That's called presentism. That's us today looking at things of the past with the eyes of today. Jefferson, Washington, slaveholders, most of our founding fathers, at least the ones in the South. So I'm not going to get into that either, but it's interesting to note that so many men, when they were given a chance, the black men, they joined the Army and the Navy like crazy. There were roughly 40,000 that gave their life during the war, and they didn't really get involved until 1862, 1863. So another reason that the veterans and us, we should honor them for their service to the country. So the William Harkness House, that's another view of it from the air. It's a beautiful place. It was just sold last year, and I had been hoping to get in there and maybe get some pictures of it before the new people moved in. Didn't work out, but it's a beautiful place. That's the sign that's right next to West Winding Hill Road. And so if you're over that way and you want to stop in, I try to back down in because getting back out's hard. But the gate, you can pull down to it and just walk around it. Go around this side if you would. That's Gates's property, and this is another man to the west. So if you walk down, next please. This is some of what the veterans did. They put the flagpole up, they fly flags. Those don't look very good, but they'll be changed on Memorial Day, brand new flags. And they put up the marker. And I think 3 years ago, or maybe 4 years ago, Cumberland County designated it as a landmark in the county. And that's what that is. That circa 1862 is really not accurate. But when Chestnut Hill was built, that's why they assigned the date to both. But there were people in here. And it's called Lincoln Cemetery because after the emancipation of the slaves, when the war was over, and I don't know if you knew this, but when Lincoln did the Emancipation Proclamation, which came out January 1st of 1863, it only freed the slaves in the states that were in rebellion against the Union. It did not free anybody else, and there were slaves up north too. So when the war was over and emancipation was law, many black cemeteries changed their name to the Lincoln Cemetery. So there are Lincoln cemeteries all over the Northeast, probably hundreds of them, small ones like this. Next. Okay. Richard Ewell was the major general that brought troops, Confederate troops, into Pennsylvania and into Carlisle. He took Carlisle the end of June of 1863. And I just wanted to put up some pictures of local things that went on here. Albert Gallatin Jenkins, Brigadier General. He was a Confederate. He's the one that took Mechanicsburg on the morning of June 28th. It was a Sunday morning. And he came into town from Carlisle with about 800 Confederate cavalry and mounted infantry. And they took the town of Mechanicsburg. So our little old Mechanicsburg has the distinction of being the northernmost town taken in the American Civil War. Next, please. Darius Couch was the Union general in charge of the defenses of Harrisburg. And a little bit of background on Couch. His men were down in present-day Lemoyne, Camp Hill area. And there's a fort up on Negley Park that was named for him. And then there's another one named Fort Washington, because after they built his fort, or what they named it for him, some of the guys were standing up there and they looked over to the west and they said, well, that hill's higher than this one. So if the Confederates had gotten any artillery pieces up there, they'd have been able to rain down bad stuff. And that's why I brought different size balls. This one was found in Harper's Ferry. While I'm on the subject of Perryville, Kentucky, this ball, which is a 12-pound solid shot, was found in Camp Hill, about a third of a mile east of the Peace Church, if you know where the Peace Church is. And so that's very rare. The fighting that went on here, well, you have the Peace Church, or which one are you going? Okay, we're still in Shepherdstown here. I have this paper up here, was given to me last year, 1981 article. This guy up on the Widow's Walk, his name is William C. Davis. He went by, or goes by, Jack, and he's still around in Virginia. He lived in the Hilltop House for about 30 years. He's the one who fixed it up initially. And Jack has written over 60 books on the American Civil War. He has written more than anybody else. So knowledgeable. I mean, he's really, well, the reason he left here, he was one of the editors of Civil War Times, but he left here because he was offered a professorship, I think Virginia Tech. It was in Virginia, one of the colleges. So this was a 1900 photo, this one 81, when he was starting to get it fixed up. But the widow walk up on the top, that's a picture of him that they put in the newspaper at that time. So as far as Upper Allen and the Civil War, which I'm going to get into that in October, I'll be back here to speak about that. As the Confederates came in, there's the Peace Church. And if you notice, this is St. John's Church Road, and it's almost up level with the church. Now it's way down, but this shot was taken in 1915, and I love that place. I mean, if you've never been there, we're having a concert series through the summer, June, July, and August, and it will be every Sunday afternoon except for Father's Day and the 4th of July weekend, or if it gets too hot. We had to cancel one last year because it was supposed to hit 94. There's no air conditioning in that place. So we did have to cancel one. Okay, I had mentioned a ground penetrating radar survey. This was done by Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission. This is the Peace Church. This is the cemetery there, St. John's Cemetery. The church would be over this way a little bit. These circles that are purple, those were wigwams. The native people in this area lived in wigwams, not teepees. Longhouses were further up north. We call the Iroquois. They called themselves Haudenosaunee, and that means people of the longhouse. But around here, they were circular, and through the radar, they could ascertain small holes that were darker color. Those were the wood, the posts that they used. So those are first contact. And I should have put a picture of the tree up. There's a tree just north of the building, at the back of the building. If you drive past it again, look at the tree. It's a white ash. And last year we determined, people from Big Tree, PA, determined it's between 350 and 400 years old. So again, that predates white contact. At that time, there were no whites had come this side of the Susquehanna River. So that tree is very, very, they call it a witness tree, because during the Civil War, the guy with the long beard, Jenkins, he set up 4 artillery pieces on the grounds of the church. 2 were on St. John's Church Road, which was dirt facing east toward Camp Hill. 2 were set up on Trindle Road. This ball did not come from one of them. They were Parrott guns, and they fired 8-pound rounds. And this is a 12-pounder. But there was a Confederate outfit on Market Street. His name was Witcher, and they did have some 12-pounders. So this could have been one of his shots. I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know. But Jenkins engaged with the Union militia for about 2.5, 3 hours in a back and forth where they were shooting at each other. And so that the grounds of the Peace Church was part of a battlefield. Most people don't think about that. And even if you grew up around here, when I was a kid, you never heard that. You never heard them talk about it. And in fact, Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission, when they got the church building designated and put on the National Register of Historic Places, they never once mentioned anything about the local state or national significance of those grounds, and it was part of the northernmost battlefield in the Civil War. There's another one. Part of that whole thing was the skirmish at Sporting Hill, which is out on Route 11. But it started here because they came from Mechanicsburg, stopped at the Rupp House, which is about 1.5 miles west of this. Jenkins took that for a headquarters. Then they moved on. One of the ironic things about those cannon that he was firing at the Union boys with, they were Union cannon. As they were coming north, when they got to Winchester, Virginia, which was like the hub of a wheel, all these roads, kind of like Gettysburg, that was June 15th of 1863 as they were coming north. And they ran into Rebs there, and they had a pretty good sized battle. It's called the Second Battle of Winchester. There were 3 total and about 11 or 12 smaller engagements. But the Confederates whooped the Yankees' butts pretty good. And one account I read, they captured 26 artillery pieces. Another one said 22. That's a lot of cannon and all the supplies, wagons of food, powder, projectiles. And 4 of those guns were Parrott guns. They fired 8-pound shot. And so you had those rebels shooting at the Yankees with Confederate gun or with Union guns, Union powder, and Union balls. Kind of interesting, but that happened a lot. So did you have? Okay, I have copies up here too, but this is the registration, the application for the registration of to be placed, for the Lincoln Cemetery to be placed on the National Register. There was a professor from Shippensburg, Eric Berg, and a lady who was in his classes. She's from the area here. She's been doing a lot of historical stuff for many years, named Christine Musser. And they did all the paperwork to have this submitted. It was 62 pages long, 31 pages both sides, photos, all kinds of stuff that they required. And it was approved to be put on the National Register. And that was December 15th of 2022. So I really hope something's done about that, but we'll have to see what happens. This is a 1935 plot plan. I think there's about 320 marked graves, but of course they weren't all filled up. And a lot of the ones that were buried out there weren't necessarily within the confines of this. Sorry, that's kind of out of focus. Was there anything else? This was a township paper that was put out about 3 years ago. That's the Cumberland County plaque. This was 1999, so I guess, Nancy, was your first one 98? Okay, and I moved back from Florida in 97, and I heard about it, and I told my dad, I said, hey, he was in World War II. I said, hey, let's go down there for Memorial Day. And we couldn't believe how beautiful it was, and is. It was really cleaned up, and should have a picture on the back of this. Here's something that I just got Friday. It's a list that was compiled in the Mechanicsburg Museum Association. Beverly Bone copied this for me. I think she compiled it too. Go ahead through them. I think there's 121. And those are names of people that are buried in there. This is the fountain in Mechanicsburg. Does that look clear to you back there? Maybe it looks weird to me because I'm up so close. This man right here We think that's James Spriggs. He's a black man. But one of the books says, no, that wasn't him. That was a mistake. So I'm not sure about that. And these are just, this photo was taken down south. These are U.S. colored troops. Lincoln had a tough time getting approval to give them uniforms and guns. This is a book that a friend of mine gave me. She passed away last Halloween. But this is an older book from 19, Cumberland County 250th Anniversary Committee. So this is an old book, but there are a lot of good pictures in here of local things, including Upper Island Township. And that's it for the slides. So as I said, the things that I brought, these firearms are all replicas. And I don't need to really go through them other than like the revolvers. This is a 44 caliber new model Army. This is a Remington, the most accurate of any of them. 1860 Colt Army. And Army or Navy denotes the caliber. Army was 44. This is a Navy, which is 36 caliber. A Colt, 1850, 51. And these were, for their time, these were the best things you could get. I mean, these were really quite, this is a Wells Fargo, and this one is a Colt pocket pistol. But they're all replicas. But I brought a Pennsylvania rifle too, just because of my talking about the revolutionary times. And this is an 1862 Confederate Zoab. And I shoot this stuff too. I started shooting in 1982, so I've been shooting for 43 years. Lisa, this is my wife. She's my she's my conscience. In the talks over the years that I've done, I did talk a good bit about different soldiers. I would usually do 2 or 3 different ones and talk about the records that we have of them. I didn't even get into this other stuff, and I'm not going to have time to. We did start at 5 of, and it's been 35 minutes. So, okay. I got to bring this up, and I should have done this before. People ask me, well, why are you involved with that cemetery? You know, how'd you get involved? I knew that they were having the Memorial Day services there because of going there with my dad back in 99. And one day I was working and I thought, I got to tell that story about that my mom told me. So I called Nancy, and my mom was in charge of what was called the Beislein House. It was part of the Dauphin County home out on Paxton Street. The Beislein House is still there. It's a 9-story building out behind where the old buildings, if you're from around here and you remember the Dauphin County home, those buildings predated the Civil War, but they're all gone and there are newer ones. But in 1971, they started a program out there at the Beislein House that my mom was the supervisor for. She was in charge of it. And I believe, and I'm trying to determine this, if it was the first assisted living program, not only in Pennsylvania, but in the country. And I'm almost sure, I've been trying to find out, and I've been in touch with Ken Frew over at the Dauphin County Historical Society, and he said they have absolutely no records and they can't find any. It appears that when they were cleaning the place out, somebody took them out and dumped them in a dumpster because they're lost. So I said to him, well, my mom was meticulous with her record keeping. And I have all the records of everybody that went through there from 1971 to 1989. And I'm going to donate them to the Cumberland County Historical, or Dauphin County Historical Society when I get more research done. So what happened was she had a lady in her program that grew up in Mechanicsburg, a Black lady. And the lady was telling her about where her mom was buried. And my mom said, well, I know where that is. That's out on West Winding Hill Road. Would you like to go there? And she said, yes, I would. And for you ladies that were here in January, I'm sorry, this is a repeat, but so my mom took this lady out there. This was around 1974, 75. So there's my mom. She was a shorter lady and she had her white, the nurses used to wear white, white dresses, white shoes. And she took her out there and those two ladies crawled in that jungle among the weeds and everything. And they got in there and the lady said, well, now that stone shouldn't be there. It should be over here. And my mom said, are you sure? Yes. So my mom drug it over to where she said, and then that stone shouldn't be there. It should be over here. And same thing, my mom moved it. So if those stones aren't in the right place, maybe it's partially my mom's fault. I don't know about that. So anyway, she told me about that. And I said to her, how do you know she knew what she was talking about? And she said, she doesn't have dementia or Alzheimer's. She's really with it. She knows. So that was a good thing my mom did, but that got me interested way back when. And Nancy wanted me to tell that story at the, well, I got to speak at that time for Memorial Day. That was 4 years ago. And it's a true story. So I guess I could keep talking for another hour or two, but it's warm in here. Yeah. And we want to have a little bit of a question and answer. And I'll do the best to answer as truthfully as I can. If I can, I'll make it up. Yes.
Hold on one second. You're going to need a mic. They won't be able to hear you online though without a mic.
With the Historical Society, the Army Historical, they keep records of people that were in the military, especially in Pennsylvania. Did they have any records of the colored troops with their names?
By Army, you mean in
The
Carlisle?
Heritage Center. Have you checked there to see? They've got,
No,
they have quite, I found my grandfather, my great-great-grandfather who was in the Civil War, the records there. And he came in the Civil War like towards the end.
Was he Union or Confederate?
He was Union.
I had ancestors on both sides and killed too. At least two for the South and one died at Malvern Hill fighting for the North. I don't know, and I will check into that.
They have quite a few people that do research, and you can go in there and do research.
Right. Well, I used to go when it was at the War College back in the 80s and 90s, and they didn't even have everything on microfilm at that time. But now things have changed a lot. So I will check into that. Thank you. Another thing following along those lines, in 1946, right after World War II, there was a major fire at the Veterans Administration in Kansas City, and a lot of records. I mean, we had 16 or 17 million men served in that 4-year conflict, World War II. And a lot of those records were lost in that fire. So sometimes you run into a stone wall, you can't find anymore. Anybody else? Yes.
Hold on one second.
Kind of a silly question, but do you trace your roots back to Robert Gould Shaw, who was the officer in charge of?
He was in Boston. He was from Boston.
Yeah.
Robert Gould Shaw was the colonel in charge of the 54th Massachusetts, which was the largest group of Black soldiers in the Civil War. And my last name is the same, Shaw, S-H-A-W. And I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know. I do know, which I just found out a couple years ago, my grandfather Shaw was born in Philadelphia, 1899. And there was a lady in Philly named Shaw. She was a rather large woman, very, very wealthy. And she was very instrumental in women getting the vote. She was a suffragette. Unfortunately, she died in 1919, so she didn't see the women get the vote. But I think I might be related to her too. So there's something else I should check out though. Any other comments or questions?
We know why the cemetery came to be located in Upper Allen Township?
The man asked if we know why it became where it is now. No, I believe personally, I think William Harkness may have buried some of his slaves in there because it was pretty far away from the house. And when Harkness died in, I think he died 1819, I think. Maybe it was 22. He owned most of the land from Mechanicsburg to the Yellow Breeches Creek. Now, there were a lot of farms in between that were there, and of course, he didn't own them, but he owned all the surrounding area. So he was a very wealthy landowner. There's a Lincoln Cemetery in Carlisle as well. And they know that a burial was done there in 1809. But again, there were probably people buried in there. You know, they segregated them. They didn't bury the whites with the blacks. And there were probably people buried in there much earlier than that because that was established 1750. So why this is where it is, I'm not really sure, but it predated Chestnut Hill, which was 1862. And the lady has so your answer is, or my answer is, I don't really know. Yes, ma'am.
Hold on one second.
As far as I know, I've been a member of the Vietnam Veterans forever, seems like. From what I understand, the black soldiers were not allowed at Chestnut Hill Cemetery.
That's right.
And a farmer donated that piece of land to bury them. That's what our understanding is. Anything else?
Well, there's graves in there that predate 1862. I mean, when they were born.
What I was told, Kevin, was, and I'm not sure, when was the Gates of Heaven started? Do you know?
That was just
Recent,
15 years, maybe.
15?
Yes, somewhere around that. It's fairly new, and it took part of the Harkness land. Well, Harkness had the whole area there, and the house where Mr. Gates lives, that was
Yes.
1819. It was a brick house. So wealthy people back then, a lot of times they'd have one or two slaves.
Well, and the Underground Railroad came through there. Well, they, the way we understand it, they said that the first black soldier, slave, what have you, was killed. They couldn't be buried in the white cemetery.
Right.
They had to go across the road. So they went across the road and got a plot of ground down in where it is. And that's how it got started. And then it just kept, you know, this is where all the blacks went then because they weren't allowed in the white cemetery.
Right.
But they didn't mention Chestnut Hill. But if Chestnut Hill wasn't started until after Lincoln, then I don't know what cemetery they're talking about. They said they went across the road.
There was a small family plot behind the Harkness house. I was told about that, and I haven't found it, but I'd have to ask permission to go in there. as far as soldiers, black soldiers, I'd like to bring up one more thing about that. It's estimated there were 180,000 black Army soldiers and about 40,000 Navy. And your husband, Paul, made a statement to me 4 years ago when I was getting to know you. He said years ago, one of the news people asked him, well, why do you care essentially about these black soldiers? And Paul looked at him and said, we all bleed red. And as a Vietnam veteran, that's exactly right. And they were fighting for this country as we know it, But that's a good point about we don't know the time. If we can ever get a survey done, a ground penetrating, that's when you start digging up people too. Because at the Peace Church, there are 2 graves right next to Trindle Road that were Native Americans. So how they determined that, I guess they dug and then they put them back. But there's another 1 or 2 surveys needed for the Peace Church. And that building was built 1798. So,
Well, we didn't know that that cemetery was there until we went to the Cumberland County Veterans Affairs Office. And we said, well, these other organizations like the VFW, the American Legion, whatnot, they put flags on graves for Memorial Day. Is there a cemetery in the area that we can put flags on? And the Veterans Affairs officer at the time said, yep, sure is. So he said there's 12 Civil War soldiers buried there. And he gave us the names. And he said, this is where it is. And we went to find it. And that was March of 1998. So we were bound and determined that we were going to bring this cemetery back to where we could have a memorial service there, just like every other cemetery does. So we worked hard for 2 months and with engine jacks and whatnot to bring it back to have the Memorial Day service there in 1998. But that's how we got to the cemetery, through the Cumberland County Veterans Affairs.
thanks for cleaning it up. And to Bob Griffiths for cutting the grass and
Yeah, it's our, we love it out there.
So peaceful.
Uh-huh.
And sit on the benches. Of course, benches may be dirty at this time of year, but it is peaceful. You don't even really hear the traffic. You hear the
Right.
birds more than anything.
it is extremely relaxing. And the benches are clean. I was there
I
Friday.
thought they would
Like, we
be.
cleaned them up last year,
Uh-huh.
scrubbed them with, and rinsed them. And they'll be clean for Memorial Day. So you'll be able to sit down. Yes, sir.
If a ground penetrating,
If a ground penetrating radar survey was undertaken, what might it show?
It would show a lot of things that we don't know now because being affiliated with Peace Church, we had no idea how many unmarked graves there are over there. And if any of you are familiar with the Peace Church, sorry, Lisa, I'm getting away from that camera. We had no idea there are graves all around that church. There are graves partway under St. John's Church Road that they covered over. So what it shows is anomalies in the soil. And that's why it showed those circles, which PHMC figures that those are remnants of wigwams. So if a survey was done, They're usually followed up by an archaeological dig. And that's where you're really going to start finding things. And if they did that, and it's expensive, those machines are expensive and it costs a lot to do the technicians that determine what the anomalies probably are without digging them up, they get paid pretty well. With that said, I was told last year about three or four Confederates that are buried on the other side of Carlisle on private property. So I need to get off my duff and follow up with that, because if I can determine that there are 3 or 4 Confederates buried there in unmarked graves, I've already talked to them down at Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond, and they will take the bodies. And as a descendant of Confederate soldiers, I'd like to see those bodies back on Southern soil. A lot of people wouldn't care, but that was a big thing. In the 1870s and 80s, thousands were dug up, about 3,200 from Gettysburg, taken back to Southern soil. So to me, that would be a good thing to do. Yes, ma'am. We got a second.
About 31, did you say there were about 31 marked graves right now in the Lincoln
I
Cemetery?
think there's 82.
Oh, 82.
I said 31 pages for the National Register on both sides, the application papers. Yes, sir.
Black colored Confederate troops interred at Lincoln Cemetery.
No. The man asked if there were any black Confederates, Lincoln Cemetery, not that we know of. There were, and believe it or not, there were hundreds and hundreds of black men that fought for the Confederacy too. They were promised freedom at the end of the war. Of course, they were promised that in the Revolution too. About 1 out of every 10 soldiers in our Revolution were black. And they fought for independence, and yet they didn't get it, you know. So, but no, I don't know of any Confederate black soldiers around here. There are other bodies around too. I found of a farm down outside of Red Line, York County. The guy says there's 6 or 7 in there, and they don't farm that area because they were usually buried very shallowly. So they'd be dug up. And there's 3 or 4 out next to the cemetery out at Hoagstown. They probably were dug up, probably plowed up over the years. We don't know. So those bones could be spread all through the fields. What do I do for time?
Are there any more questions?
Question, but on this coming Sunday at 1 o'clock, we are going to be out at the cemetery cleaning to get ready for Memorial Day. So if there's anyone at all that wants to come out and help to weed or to plant flowers or to bring a weed whacker, a jug of water maybe, that would be great. And we can, I mean, we always appreciate any help that we get. And we've gotten a lot of help over the years from different organizations. And actually the shed that's out there was donated by Home Depot. Brought it out, set it up, everything. So, I mean, we've had a lot of help and a lot of support. And so if anybody wants to come out, we would appreciate the help at
And
1 o'clock on Sunday.
maybe some gloves to pull poison ivy off the trees.
Yeah, there you go. We got some poison ivy out there.
It is a nice place. It's very serene and peaceful, as the lady said. And I go out there once in a while, park the car, walk down through it, sit on the bench, and the benches will be clean. You'll be able to come out and you won't get green moss on your butt. So we'll have them nice and cleaned up again. They all look good except for one, but we cleaned them really well last year, and I'll make sure that one's clean too. Any other questions, comments? And if you want to walk past and look at any of the things I brought, one of the, oh, you did have one?
I got it, Kevin.
Yeah, you said the Harkness House there at the intersection of Whiting Hill
Harkness
and York uh, predates the cemetery, correct? Or do we not know that?
It was started in 1783, finished in 1788. We still really don't know when the first black people were buried out there. Now, the one on the hill, 62, that was 1862. The White Cemetery, Chestnut Hill.
Mhm.
And when Jenkins was coming into Mechanicsburg, he had troopers on both sides of the main body because they didn't know where the Union Army was until Lee ran into him, at Gettysburg. And that was July 1st was when that battle was, a Wednesday. When the battles at Gettysburg, which is what it was. It wasn't one battle. It was a series of different actions over 3 days. So as far as dates go, it's kind of hard to tell.
So was there someone that owned that property prior to the Hark?
Yes.
And who was that? I was told that originally there was a 500-acre parcel that was deeded to the original owners of that property by the Penn family. Could that be possibly true?
I heard that too. Yes. That,
And at our farm, when that picture you have right there,
Mhm.
you're looking at our silos right below the sun.
okay,
And you're looking at our ground right there.
okay.
And I do know that that cemetery was cleaned up by Boy Scouts back in the 60s.
Yes.
Carl Dietz was a member of a Boy Scout troop that worked in there years. I think that was back in the 60s when Carl was probably in his teens. Yeah, I'm not.
Corn horse, is that a corn horse farm?
No, that's a Strock farm.
Oh, Straugh's, okay. The turkey people.
You bet.
Yeah.
That's me.
What you're talking about is correct. And if you want to come up here afterwards, I'll just read this quickly. Warrant to William Lyons, 1763. Then he sold it 1770 to a Thomas Martin. 1771, he sold it to Belzer Orth Jr. 1783, Joshua Myers bought it, and I guess he sold it to Harkness pretty soon after that. And interestingly enough, when Thomas Martin bought it in 1770, 126 and a half acres, he paid 70 pounds for it. When he sold it a year later, he charged 180 pounds for it. So land speculation is nothing new. I mean, it's it's the way it's always been. So you're welcome. This is research that was done for the bicentennial, the book that Upper Allen put out, the Upper Allen Heritage Committee, they called themselves. And this lady, Faynell Evans, she was very instrumental in that too. So fortunately, I got almost all her research papers.
Mhm.
She gave me some before she died, and then after she died, her daughter gave me a couple boxes of other papers too, and I'd be glad to share them.
Yeah, I know that farm has been in our family since 1913. I researched the deeds at the courthouse, and the first strock that I could find on the deed to our farm was 1913.
That's a good picture. My wife took it. Yes. Oh, okay. It's on the blanket. And if you've heard of a book called Homes of the Heroes, it just came out, I think 4 or 5 years ago. Marlene Baer took the cover photo of the Harkness house, and it was done by the DAR, the Daughters of the American Revolution. And so the Harkness house, it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's really nice, and it's been maintained. So that's a good thing to have on there, because that's probably what's the style they would call that? It's one of the finest homes of that era in the township. No question about it.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate it. Kevin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And make sure you continue to check on our website throughout the summer for all of our events leading up to the big 175th Fall Festival in the fall. Thank you.